Step away from that elevator. Now!
There's a woman trapped inside.
You?
Bradley Tate laughed.
You're a cockroach in a uniform. You don't fix things, you break them. That's all your kind has ever done. She's running out of time. Shut up! I can smell you from here. Security, drag this filthy animal away from my equipment.
Emmett didn't move. 31 floors up, a fist pounded weakly against steel. Then silence. No one knew the woman inside owned the entire company. No one knew the man they called an animal was the only engineer who'd ever built that elevator. He saved her life that night. But what she gave him afterwards, a new career, a new beginning, and something his heart had given up on, nobody saw that coming. Sterling Tower rose 42 floors above downtown Chicago, a pillar of glass and steel that caught the morning sun and threw it back across the river. Inside, 3,000 employees moved through climate-controlled hallways, swiped keycards at frosted glass doors, and rode 6 high-speed elevators that connected the ground floor to the executive suite without a single stop. The building was the crown jewel of Sterling Industries, a conglomerate that touched everything from commercial real estate to medical devices. Emmett Owens had worked the night maintenance shift for 14 months. He clocked in at 6 in the evening and clocked out at 2 in the morning. His locker sat in the basement, next to the boiler room, in a corridor that smelled like rust and recycled air. The company didn't give maintenance staff access to the employee lounge, the cafeteria, or any restroom above the second floor. Those were unwritten rules. The written ones were worse. His shift started the same way every night. Badge scan at the service entrance, gray jumpsuit from the rack, toolbox from the shelf. Then whatever Bradley Tate had left on the whiteboard. Always the worst jobs, always the ones no one else would touch. Tonight the board read, Owens, B2 grease trap, loading dock pressure wash, lobby floor restrip. Do not enter floors 3+. Emmett didn't complain. He never did. He had a 7-year-old daughter named Lily who slept at Mrs. Patterson's apartment down the hall until he got home at 2:30. He had rent due on the 15th. He had a car with a transmission that slipped between second and third. Complaining was a luxury that cost more than he could afford. Every morning before his shift, Emmett picked Lily up from school. They had a routine: grilled cheese at the kitchen counter, homework at the coffee table, then 30 minutes of cartoons before Mrs. Patterson knocked on the door. Every night when he left, Lily would press her face against the window and wave until he disappeared around the corner. He always looked back. Always. He started with the grease trap. 2 hours on his knees in standing water, pulling clumps of solidified fat from a drain that hadn't been serviced in months. The smell clung to his skin long after he finished, a fact Bradley never missed. Jesus Christ, Owens. Bradley appeared at the basement stairs around 9, coffee in hand, tie loosened. He was the building operations manager, a title that mostly meant he forwarded emails and took credit for other people's work. He pinched his nose with 2 fingers. You smell like something crawled inside you and died. Do the rest of us a favor and keep yourself below ground level tonight. Some of the executives are working late, and I don't need them thinking we hired a sewer rat. 2 technicians behind Bradley snickered. One held up his phone. Emmett couldn't tell if he was recording. Grease trap's done, Emmett said quietly. I flagged the drain line. It needs a full flush, or it'll back up into the kitchen within a week. Bradley took a slow sip of his coffee. Did I ask for your engineering opinion? No, sir. Then keep your observations to yourself. Your maintenance. You maintain. You don't think, Owens. Thinking is above your pay grade, and from what I've seen, way above your ability. Now get back to your hole. Emmett picked up his bucket and moved toward the loading dock. This was the rhythm. Every single shift. Bradley found a reason to stop by. and every visit ended the same way, with Emmett a little smaller than when it started. The insults had a pattern, almost rehearsed. They always touched the same nerves: his intelligence, his hygiene, his skin. Sometimes it was a look, the way Bradley's eyes would narrow when Emmett stood near a piece of expensive equipment, as if proximity alone would cause contamination. Sometimes it was a comment made just loud enough for others to hear. "I keep telling HR we need to run criminal background checks on these overnight guys. You never know what kind of people they let wander around after dark." Last month, a water pipe burst on the 8th floor. Emmett was first on the scene. He shut off the valve, isolated the leak, and saved the server room from flooding. When Bradley arrived 20 minutes later, he looked at the wet floor, looked at Emmett, and said, in front of 4 employees, "I hope you didn't touch anything above your skill level. Last thing I need is a lawsuit because the janitor played plumber." One of the employees, a young woman from accounting, had looked at Emmett with something close to pity. That was worse than the insult. The other night staff learned quickly. Craig Weaver, a white electrician who'd started 3 months before Emmett, watched the pattern and said nothing. He was a decent man, with a mortgage and 2 kids in braces. Silence was his survival strategy, and Emmett didn't blame him for it. But 3 weeks ago, something shifted. The HVAC system on the 12th floor had failed during a weekend heat wave. Temperatures in the server room hit 104 degrees. Bradley called 2 outside contractors. Both quoted 72 hours and $15,000 minimum. The servers would fry long before then. Emmett had studied that HVAC unit during his rounds. He recognized the model, a Carrier 50XC series with a dual compressor setup. The issue wasn't the compressor itself. It was a failed expansion valve causing the refrigerant to short cycle. He'd fixed the same problem 3 times at his previous job. He told Bradley. Bradley looked at him like he'd spoken a foreign language. "Owens, I wouldn't trust you to fix a leaky faucet. Go clean the parking garage." So Emmett waited until Bradley left for the night. Then he went to the 12th floor, opened the access panel, replaced the expansion valve with a compatible part from the basement supply room, and recalibrated the thermostat. Total time, 90 minutes. Total cost, a $40 valve. Monday morning, the system was running perfectly. Bradley told the executive team he'd coordinated an emergency repair over the weekend. He received a commendation email from the VP of operations. Emmett received nothing. Not a word, not a nod, not even eye contact. Craig found Emmett in the basement the next night. "That was you, wasn't it? The HVAC fix." Emmett shrugged. "Doesn't matter." "It does matter. He's taking credit for your work. Again." "Craig, I've got a daughter who needs health insurance. I've got 19 months until I qualify for the company's tuition reimbursement so I can recertify my engineering license. 19 months. I can swallow whatever Bradley Tate feeds me for 19 months. Craig stared at him. "What if he fires you before then?" "Then I'll find another way. I always do." Craig walked away without another word. But he started leaving his coffee on Emmett's locker shelf every night. Black, no sugar, still warm. He never mentioned it. Neither did Emmett. Tonight, a Thursday in late October, Emmett was finishing the lobby floor when he heard it. A sound most people would miss entirely. A faint metallic groan coming from the elevator shaft of Unit 3. The express elevator that ran non-stop from the lobby to the executive floors. He pressed his palm flat against the shaft door. Vibration. Irregular. The motor was cycling unevenly, and there was a secondary hum underneath. The kind that meant a relay board was pulling inconsistent current. He'd heard that exact sound before. 6 years ago, when he was a lead engineer at OmniLift Systems, the company that had manufactured and installed every elevator in Sterling Tower. That sound had preceded a cable lock failure in a building in Detroit. 2 people were trapped for 9 hours. The repair cost $250,000 and nearly ended someone's life. Emmett found Bradley in the operations office, feet on the desk, watching a basketball game on his phone. Mr. Tate, Unit 3 is showing signs of a relay fault. The motor's cycling unevenly. I'd recommend we shut it down for inspection tonight. Bradley didn't look up. Owens, how many times do I have to say this? You don't touch the elevators. You don't diagnose the elevators. You don't even breathe near the elevators. Omnilift handles the elevators. That's their contract. Sir, if the relay board fails under load with a passenger inside... Are you deaf or just stupid? Bradley finally looked up. His eyes were flat and cold. Go finish the lobby. And Owens, if I find out you've been anywhere near that shaft again, I'll write you up so fast your little girl won't have a daddy with a job by sunrise. Are we clear? Emmett held his gaze for 1 second longer than usual. Then he turned and walked out. At 9:47 that evening, Victoria Sterling, CEO of Sterling Industries, the woman whose signature appeared on every paycheck in this building, stepped into Unit 3 on the 38th floor. She'd stayed late reviewing quarterly projections. Her briefcase was in her left hand. Her insulin kit was on her desk, next to a half-finished cup of tea she'd planned to come back for. The doors closed. The elevator descended 3 floors. Then it stopped. The lights flickered, once, twice, and held at half brightness. Victoria pressed the lobby button. Nothing. She pressed the emergency call button. A dial tone. Static. Then silence. 31 floors above the ground, sealed inside 6,000 pounds of steel, the most powerful woman in Chicago stood completely alone. Her blood sugar had been dropping since 7. Without insulin, her body would start shutting down within the hour, and the only man who could reach her had just been told to stay away, or lose everything he had left. What happens next would prove that talent doesn't wait for permission. Emmett Owens didn't learn machines from a textbook. He learned them from his father's hands. Raymond Owens ran a 1-bay garage on the east side of Detroit, a cinder-block building with a tin roof that leaked when the wind blew sideways, and a hand-painted sign that read, Owens & Son, we fix what others won't. Emmett was the son. He'd been the son since he was 5 years old, standing on an overturned milk crate to reach the engine block of a 1987 Ford pickup that wouldn't start. Put your hand here, Raymond would say, pressing Emmett's small palm against the side of a carburetor. Feel that? That vibration? That's the engine talking to you. Every machine talks, son. You just gotta learn to listen. By the time Emmett was 12, he could rebuild a transmission blindfolded. By 15, he was rewiring entire electrical systems for neighbors who couldn't afford a real shop. Raymond never charged them full price. Half the East Side owed him favors instead of money, and he never collected on a single one. We don't fix things for money, Raymond told him once, elbow deep in a diesel engine on a Saturday night. We fix things because broken is wrong, because somebody out there needs this thing to work so they can get to their job or pick up their kid or make it to the hospital. That's why we fix things. The money's just what keeps the lights on. Emmett carried that sentence in his chest like a second heartbeat. He graduated from Cass Technical High School with the highest GPA in his class. Full scholarship to Wayne State University. Bachelor's in Mechanical Engineering, summa cum laude. His father sat in the 3rd row at graduation, wearing the only suit he owned. A brown one, with a tear in the left sleeve that Emmett's mother had mended with thread that didn't quite match. Raymond cried exactly once when Emmett's name was called. Then he wiped his face with the back of his hand and never mentioned it again. Omnilift Systems hired Emmett straight out of college. Within 3 years, he was a lead engineer on their commercial elevator division, designing, testing, and certifying the high-speed systems installed in office towers across the Midwest. He held 2 patents. His team trusted him. His supervisors respected him. For the first time in his life, the world seemed to agree with what Raymond had always told him, that skill doesn't have a color. Then everything fell apart in the space of 11 months. His father died first, lung cancer. The diagnosis came in March. Raymond was gone by July. Emmett flew back to Detroit, buried him in the plot next to Emmett's mother, who'd passed when Emmett was 19, and cleaned out the garage alone. He kept the hand-painted sign. It sat in his closet now, wrapped in a moving blanket, behind a box of Lily's baby clothes. 5 months after Raymond's funeral, Emmett's wife Denise collapsed at work. Brain aneurysm. She was 31 years old. She never woke up. Emmett took emergency leave, then extended leave, then more leave. He missed deadlines, missed meetings, missed the quarterly review that determined his department's restructuring. When the layoff notice arrived, it was polite and final. Due to organizational changes, your position has been eliminated. No mention of his patents, no mention of his 7 years. Just a severance check and a cardboard box. He was a single father now. Lily was 4. She didn't understand where her mother went. She asked every night for 2 months. And every night, Emmett held her and said the same thing. "Mama's somewhere safe, baby, and I'm right here. I'm not going anywhere." He needed work. Needed it immediately. Not for pride, for insurance. Lily had asthma. Her inhaler cost $112 a month without coverage. The maintenance position at Sterling Tower paid $14 an hour, but it came with health benefits that started on day 1. Emmett took the job the same afternoon he found the listing. He told himself it was temporary. 19 months to qualify for tuition reimbursement, recertify his license, get back to engineering. 19 months of mopping floors and cleaning grease traps and swallowing Bradley Tate's poison. And then he'd climb back. Every night after his shift, after Mrs. Patterson went home and Lily was asleep, Emmett sat at the kitchen table with his old engineering manuals spread open under the lamp. He solved practice problems. He reviewed schematics. He kept his mind sharp, the way his father had kept his hands steady, through repetition, through discipline, through the stubborn belief that the work mattered, even when no one was watching. "Machines don't care what color you are," Raymond used to say. "They only care if you understand them." Emmett understood them. He always had. And somewhere above him, 31 floors up in the dark, a machine was waiting for the one person who spoke its language. The first call came at 9:51. A security guard named Torres was doing his rounds on the 31st floor when he noticed the elevator indicator panel frozen between floors. He pressed the call button. Nothing. He picked up the emergency phone on the wall. Dead line. He radioed the front desk. "Unit 3 is stuck. Indicator says it's somewhere between 30 and 31. I think someone might be inside." Within 4 minutes, the lobby transformed. 2 more security guards arrived, then a night shift facilities tech who had no idea what to do. Then Bradley Tate, who came out of the operations office looking annoyed, as if the emergency were a personal inconvenience. "Who's in there?" Bradley asked. Torres checked his tablet. Badge logs show 1 swipe on 38 at 9:46. Victoria Sterling. The color drained from Bradley's face. Every person in that lobby understood what that name meant. Victoria Sterling was not just the CEO. She was the founder's daughter. She was the board. She was the building. And she was trapped inside a machine that Bradley had been warned about 2 hours ago. Bradley pulled out his phone and dialed OmniLift's emergency line. The call went to an answering service. The on-call technician was 45 minutes away, minimum. A full diagnostic team couldn't mobilize until morning. "Call the fire department," Bradley snapped. They called. Engine Company 18 dispatched a truck. Estimated arrival, 12 minutes. But the dispatcher warned them. High-rise elevator rescues required specialized equipment. If the cabin was lodged between floors with a control board failure, extraction could take 3 to 4 hours. Bradley paced the lobby, barking orders that accomplished nothing. Torres tried the emergency intercom. Static. Someone suggested cutting the power. Bradley screamed at him. You want to drop the cabin 30 floors? Are you insane? Emmett had been standing near the service corridor, watching. He'd heard the radio call. He'd felt it in his gut before anyone said a word. That groan from Unit 3 hadn't been a warning. It had been a countdown. He stepped forward. Mr. Tate, I know what's wrong with that elevator. The relay board failed. It's the same fault I reported 2 hours ago. I can manually override the lockdown, realign the cabin, and open the doors. I need 20 minutes. Every head in the lobby turned. Bradley stared at him. Then he laughed. It wasn't a small laugh. It was the kind that filled a room and emptied a man. You, the janitor, you want to fix a $2 million elevator system. He turned to the security team, arms spread wide. Are you hearing this? The mop guy, the guy who was scrubbing grease out of a drain an hour ago, thinks he's a certified engineer. A nervous chuckle rippled through the lobby. Someone pulled out their phone. Sir, the woman inside is a diabetic, Emmett said. His voice was level. If her blood sugar drops below 50, she'll lose consciousness. Below 30, she could seize. We don't have 3 hours. We might not have 1. Bradley closed the distance between them, close enough that Emmett could smell the coffee on his breath. Close enough that the security cameras would catch every word. Listen to me very carefully, Owens. You are a maintenance worker. You push a mop. You unclog toilets. You are not qualified. You are not certified. And you are absolutely not putting your greasy hands inside a machine that's worth more than every paycheck you've earned in your miserable life combined. He lowered his voice, but not enough. I know guys like you. You see an opportunity to play hero so you can sue the company when it goes wrong. That's how your people operate, right? Always looking for the angle, always looking for the handout. The lobby went silent. Even the nervous chuckler put his phone down. If that woman gets hurt because some janitor who can barely read decided to play engineer, this company gets sued into the ground. And I will personally make sure every penny comes out of your worthless hide. He turned to the 2 security guards flanking the elevator bank. Nobody gets near that shaft, especially him. He pointed at Emmett without looking back. If he takes 1 step past this line, drag him out of the building. I don't care how you do it. Emmett didn't move. He stood exactly where he was, toolbox at his feet, and waited. At 10:03, the fire department arrived. Chief Henderson, a broad man in his 50s with gray at his temples and 30 years of structural rescues behind him, assessed the situation in under 2 minutes. He spoke into his radio, then turned to Bradley. The control board is shot. We can attempt a manual winch extraction, but with the cabin misaligned between floors, there's a risk of cable shear. My recommendation is to get someone who knows this specific elevator model to manually reset the system from the maintenance port. Does your building have anyone with OmniLift training? Bradley opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. OmniLift is sending a team. They'll be here in how long? Maybe an hour. Maybe... Chief, Torres stepped forward. The maintenance guy, Owens. He said he used to work for OmniLift. Henderson looked at Emmett. Is that true? 6 years. Lead engineer, commercial division. I helped design the Series 9 system, which is what's installed in this shaft. I know the maintenance port access codes, the manual override sequence, and the cable realignment protocol. Henderson studied him. Can you get her out? Yes, sir. 20 minutes. Bradley shoved himself between them. His face had gone from pale to red. Absolutely not. This man is not an engineer. He is a janitor. He has no credentials, no authorization. Mr. Tate, Henderson's voice dropped to a register that stopped every other sound in the lobby. There was a woman trapped 31 floors above us who may be going into diabetic shock right now. Your elevator company is an hour away at best. My team cannot safely extract her without risking a cable failure. And this man says he designed the system she's trapped in. He let the silence hold for 2 full seconds. I am not asking your permission. I am informing you of my decision. Step aside. Bradley's mouth opened one more time. Nothing came out. Henderson turned to Emmett. What do you need? Access to the shaft room on 31, and everyone clear of the hoistway. Go. Emmett picked up his toolbox and walked past Bradley without a glance. Past the security guards who'd been ordered to stop him. Past every person who had watched him get humiliated in this lobby for 14 months and never once opened their mouth. The elevator shaft door opened with a deep metallic groan. Warm air poured out, the smell of heated oil, scorched wiring, and overworked steel. Emmett stepped inside. The door sealed behind him. 31 floors up, Victoria Sterling sat on the floor of the cabin with her back against the wall. Her hands were trembling. Her blouse was soaked through with sweat. Her vision had started to blur at the edges, shapes bending, light smearing. She could hear her own heartbeat, too fast, too light, skipping every fourth beat. Then she heard something she didn't expect. Footsteps, steady, climbing, getting closer. And a voice, calm, warm, unhurried, echoing up through the shaft. Ma'am, my name is Emmett. I'm coming to get you out. Just hold on. The shaft room on the 31st floor was a narrow concrete space barely wide enough for 2 men standing shoulder to shoulder. Steel cables ran floor to ceiling like the tendons of some massive sleeping animal. The air was thick, hot oil, burnt insulation, the sharp tang of electrical overload. A single emergency light cast everything in amber. Emmett set his toolbox down and knelt in front of the main control cabinet. He'd built cabinets like this one. He'd wired them, tested them, signed off on their safety certifications. The model number stamped on the inside of the door read OL-S9-4200. Omnilift, Series 9, 42-floor configuration. His name was on the original engineering drawings, 3rd line down, right next to his patent number. He opened the cabinet. The smell hit first. Burnt silicon, the unmistakable signature of a relay board that had been drawing too much current for too long. Exactly what he'd told Bradley 2 hours ago. Exactly what could have been prevented with a 30-minute inspection and a phone call. Below him, in the lobby, the scene had shifted. Word had spread through the building's skeleton crew. Nearly 20 people now stood behind the security tape. Night shift accountants, a paralegal who'd been working late, 2 janitors from the West Wing, and a handful of security guards. Someone had pulled the security feed from the 31st floor camera onto the lobby's main monitor. The screen showed a grainy image of Emmett kneeling in front of the open cabinet, hands moving with a precision that didn't match the jumpsuit he was wearing. Bradley stood off to the side, arms crossed, jaw locked tight. Craig Weaver leaned against the back wall, watching the monitor without blinking. Henderson keyed his radio. Owens, what's your status? Emmett's voice came back clear and steady. Starting diagnostic. Stand by. The relay board was the brain of the elevator's movement system. It regulated current flow to the motor, managed floor stop signals, and controlled the electromagnetic brakes that held the cabin in position. When a relay board failed, the entire system locked down, a safety measure designed to prevent free fall. But lockdown also meant the cabin couldn't move, not up, not down, Not at all. The fire department's plan was to cut power, engage a manual winch, and haul the cabin to the nearest floor. But with the cabin misaligned, sitting at an angle between 30 and 31, winching risked cable shear. One wrong pull, and 6,000 pounds of steel could drop. Emmett didn't need the winch. He needed the relay board to think it was working again, just long enough to release the electromagnetic brakes. He pulled a multimeter from his toolbox and tested each relay contact. 12 contacts, 9 functional. 3 fused shut from the current surge. Contacts R4, R7, and R11. He knew these positions by heart. R4 controlled the door interlock signal. R7 managed the floor position encoder. R11 was the brake release authorization. He stripped 2 lengths of insulated wire, measured them against the contact spacing, and created manual bridge connections across all 3 fused relays. It was a technique Omnilift had developed internally for field emergencies. Never published, never included in the service manual. You learned it on the job, or you didn't learn it at all. The control panel hummed. A green indicator light that had been dark for 20 minutes flickered back to life. Down in the lobby, the monitor showed Emmett sitting back on his heels, checking the connections one final time. The paralegal turned to the woman next to her and whispered, "I thought he was a custodian." Craig heard her. He didn't correct her, but his jaw tightened. Henderson's radio crackled. "Relay bypass complete. Brakes are responsive. Moving to phase 2. Bradley unfolded his arms, then folded them again. His right foot had started tapping, a rhythm that had nothing to do with patience. With the relays bridged, Emmett accessed the elevator's onboard computer, a small industrial unit inside the control cabinet that handled firmware updates, safety logs, and diagnostic protocols. The screen was frozen on an error code. ERR-7734- lockdown engaged. Unauthorized movement detected. He recognized the error instantly. A known bug in firmware version 3.2.1, released 18 months ago. Under specific conditions, a relay failure combined with a cabin load between 800 and 1,200 pounds. The firmware misinterpreted the relay bridge as an unauthorized override and re-engaged the lockdown. A circular trap. Fix the hardware, the software locks you out. Fix the software, the hardware stays frozen. Omnilift had issued a patch, version 3.2.2, requiring physical USB installation at the maintenance port. Most buildings never received it. Sterling Tower was one of them. Emmett didn't have the patch, but he didn't need it. During development of the Series 9, his team had built a hidden maintenance access mode, a root-level override that bypassed the firmware entirely and allowed direct hardware control. It required a 12-digit code entered through the diagnostic keypad. The code wasn't written in any manual. It wasn't stored in any database. It existed only in the minds of the 4 engineers who'd created the system. Emmett was one of them. He keyed in the sequence, 12 digits, no hesitation, no pause between numbers, the way a pianist plays a phrase they've rehearsed 10,000 times. The screen flashed twice, went black, then displayed a single line of white text. Maintenance mode. Direct control enabled. A deep mechanical clunk echoed down the shaft. The sound of electromagnetic brakes releasing their hold on 6,000 pounds of steel. The lobby felt it before they heard it. A vibration through the floor, subtle but unmistakable. On the security monitor, people watched Emmett stand, flex his fingers, and move to the next panel with the calm efficiency of a surgeon between procedures. Henderson grabbed his radio. "Owens? Firmware bypassed, full manual control established. One more step." In the lobby, Bradley turned to the facilities tech beside him. "Who is this guy?" His voice had lost its edge. The tech didn't answer. He was staring at the monitor with his mouth slightly open. Craig Weaver hadn't moved from the back wall. But for the first time in 14 months, something had changed in his face. It wasn't surprise. It was recognition. The look of a man who'd always known the truth and was finally watching everyone else catch up. 31 floors above the lobby, Victoria Sterling had lost track of time. The cabin's emergency light had dimmed to a faint orange glow. She sat with her legs pulled to her chest, forehead resting on her knees. Her fingertips had gone numb 10 minutes ago. The trembling in her hands had spread to her shoulders, her jaw, her eyelids. She knew the signs. She'd been diabetic since she was 14. She knew exactly what was happening inside her body. Glucose dropping, cells starving, brain function narrowing, like a hallway with the lights going out one by one. She'd tried banging on the doors. She'd tried the emergency phone 3 times. She'd shouted until her throat burned. Nothing. No one. Then she'd heard something through the walls. Mechanical sounds. Deliberate. Purposeful. Someone was working on the other side of the steel. Someone who knew what they were doing. She pressed her palm flat against the cabin wall. The metal was warm. And somewhere beneath the vibration of gears and cables, she felt something she hadn't felt in hours. Hope. The cabin sat 2¼ inches below the 31st floor threshold. In elevator engineering, that gap was the difference between doors that open and doors that stay sealed. The automatic leveling system was offline. The firmware bypass gave Emmett motor control, but not precision positioning. He'd have to do it by hand. Behind a steel cover plate on the left side of the cabinet, a plate most technicians didn't know existed, was the manual crank assembly. It connected directly to the drive shaft through a worm gear reduction. 1 full rotation moved the cabin approximately 1/8 of an inch. Emmett needed 18 rotations, each one precise, each one smooth, 0 overcorrection. The stakes were absolute. Too much force and the cabin would overshoot the threshold, triggering a secondary safety lock that would seal the system permanently until OmniLift's factory team arrived, hours away. Too little, and the doors wouldn't clear their magnetic alignment sensors. There was no room for error. None. Emmett wrapped both hands around the crank handle. The steel was warm from the overheated shaft. He could feel the full weight of the cabin through the gears. 6,000 pounds of metal, glass, and one woman whose life depended on the steadiness of his hands. He turned, slowly, counting each rotation under his breath. 1, 2, 3. The cables above him groaned and shifted. Dust fell from the ceiling like gray snow. 7, 8, 9. His forearms burned. Sweat ran from his temples and dripped onto the concrete floor. The crank resistance increased as the cabin approached the threshold, magnetic sensors creating drag as alignment narrowed. 12, 13, 14. Through the shaft wall, he heard something. Faint, a woman's breathing. Shallow, rapid, uneven. The sound of someone fighting to stay conscious with everything she had left. 15, 16. He slowed. The margin was shrinking. 1/8 of an inch per rotation, less than the width of a pencil line. 17. He paused, closed his eyes, felt the resistance in the handle, the way the steel pushed back against his palms, telling him how close the cabin was to alignment. His father's voice, clear as the day he'd first heard it in that one-bay garage in Detroit. Every machine talks, son. You just gotta learn to listen. 18. The handle locked into position with a clean, solid click. The kind of click that meant precision, That meant alignment. That meant the difference between 2¼ inches and 0. The elevator door's magnetic sensors registered true alignment. A green light appeared on the panel. The door release circuit completed. Henderson's radio erupted. Emmett's voice came through steady, unhurried, as if he'd just finished tuning a car engine in his father's garage on a quiet Saturday afternoon. Cabin aligned. Floor 31. Ready for door release on your order, Chief. Henderson looked at his team, nodded once. Open it. The firefighter on the 31st floor landing reached for the manual release lever. He pulled. The doors began to slide apart, and every person connected to that moment, the ones in the lobby watching the monitor, the ones on 31 pressed against the corridor walls, the ones who'd laughed, the ones who'd filmed, the ones who'd stayed silent when they should have spoken. Every single one of them held their breath at the exact same time. The doors slid apart with a slow metallic hiss, and light from the corridor poured into the cabin like water breaking through a dam. Victoria Sterling was on the floor, back against the rear wall, legs folded beneath her, both hands flat on the ground as if the cabin might tilt if she let go. Her blouse was soaked through. Her skin had gone the color of wet paper. Her eyes were open but unfocused, staring at something far past the doors, far past anything in this building. Emmett stepped forward, slowly. The way you approach someone who's been holding on so long, they've forgotten they can let go. Ma'am, I'm Emmett. You're safe now. Her eyes shifted, found his face. She tried to speak, but her lips barely moved. Her body was shaking. Not the trembling of fear, but the deep, involuntary shudder of a system running on empty. She needs sugar, now, Emmett said over his shoulder. Orange juice, candy, anything. A firefighter sprinted down the corridor. Torres pulled a granola bar from his jacket and tore the wrapper. Henderson radioed for the paramedic team in the lobby. Emmett knelt beside her. He didn't grab her. He didn't pull her up. He placed one hand on her shoulder, steady, warm, and with the other guided the granola bar to her hand. Her fingers closed around it like they were remembering how to work. Small bites, slow. You've got time now. She bit, chewed, swallowed. Her eyes came back into focus 1 degree at a time, like a camera lens finding its subject. Color returned to her face in uneven patches. For a long moment she looked at him, at his gray jumpsuit, at the grease under his fingernails, at the toolbox on the floor behind him. Then at the open control cabinet, bridged relays, the diagnostic screen glowing maintenance mode, the manual crank locked in its final position. Who are you? Her voice was thin, but the question was sharp. Emmett Owens, night maintenance. She shook her head. No. Who are you really? The corridor filled with footsteps. Henderson came through with 2 paramedics. Behind them, Bradley Tate appeared at the stairwell door, out of breath, tie askew. 31 flights of stairs had stripped the performance from his face. What was left was raw. Victoria. Bradley moved toward her, voice shifting into something Emmett had never heard from him. Concerned, almost gentle. Thank God. I coordinated the entire rescue. I called Omnilift, the fire department. Mr. Tate. Henderson's voice cut through the corridor like a blade. Let me be very clear about what happened tonight. Your elevator failed because a known relay fault went uninspected. Your maintenance staff reported the issue hours before. You dismissed that report. You then physically prevented the only qualified person in this building from responding to the emergency. You threatened his job. You ordered security to remove him. The corridor went silent. The paramedics stopped. Torres looked at the floor. Bradley's arms dropped to his sides. This man, the one you called a janitor, bypassed a fused relay board, overrode locked firmware using codes only the original design team would know, and manually aligned a 6,000-pound cabin to within a fraction of an inch. 18 minutes. Alone. With a toolbox. He paused. Your rescue company estimated 3 to 4 hours with a full team. If this woman is alive right now, it is because of him. Only him. Victoria looked at Henderson, then at Bradley, then at Emmett, still kneeling beside her, one hand on her shoulder, grease on his knuckles, sweat on his forehead, and not a trace of arrogance on his face. She reached up and placed her hand over his. "Thank you," she said. 2 words, but they carried the weight of everything. The fear, the darkness, the fist pounding on steel, the moment she'd felt hope through a warm wall. Emmett nodded. "Just doing what I know how to do, ma'am." The paramedics moved in, checked her vitals, started an IV glucose drip, helped her onto a stretcher. As they wheeled her toward the service elevator, Victoria kept her eyes on Emmett until the corridor turned and he disappeared from view. In the lobby below, the security monitor showed an empty shaft room, an open toolbox, a control cabinet with its guts exposed, and a single green light, steady and bright, confirming what every person in the building now knew. The janitor had just saved the CEO's life, and nothing in Sterling Tower would ever be the same. Victoria Sterling was back in her office by noon the next day. The doctors had wanted her overnight, but she'd signed herself out at 7, with her IV still taped to her arm. She had coffee brought to the 38th floor, called HR, and said 4 words. Pull Emmett Owens's file. The file was thin, the way maintenance files always were. Name, start date, emergency contact, Mrs. Helen Patterson. Hourly rate, $14. Performance notes, none. But Victoria didn't stop there. She pulled his application, his resume, his education records. And what she found made her set her coffee down and stare out the window for a long time. Bachelor of Science in Mechanical Engineering, Wayne State University, summa cum laude. 6 years at Omnilift Systems, lead engineer, commercial division. 2 patents. Co-designer of the Series 9 platform, the exact system installed in Sterling Tower. The man who'd been mopping her floors for 14 months had literally built the machines that moved her building. She called Emmett at 2. He was home, helping Lily with a math worksheet. When the caller ID read Sterling Industries, Executive Office, he answered on the second ring. "Mr. Owens, this is Victoria Sterling. I'd like you to come in tomorrow morning. Not through the service entrance. Through the front door. 9 o'clock. He arrived at 8:45. Gray slacks, white shirt, navy tie. Borrowed from Craig the night before. Victoria met him in the executive conference room on 38. Just the 2 of them. She slid a folder across the table. Inside, Director of Engineering and Building Safety, Sterling Industries. Full salary, benefits, tuition reimbursement, and a clause crediting his 14 months of maintenance toward his pension. "You saved my life with skills this company desperately needs," she said. "I'm not offering charity, Mr. Owens. I'm correcting a mistake that should never have been made." Emmett looked at the folder, then at her, then at the view from the 38th floor, the same city he'd been looking up at from the basement for over a year. "I'll need to update my emergency contact," he said. "My daughter's school lets out at 3:15. Victoria smiled. "We'll make it work." The investigation began the following Monday. Victoria didn't hand it to HR. She hired an outside firm, a labor compliance agency, with no ties to Sterling Industries and no reason to protect anyone inside it. Their findings arrived in 9 days, 43 pages. Bradley Tate had ignored 14 maintenance reports filed by Emmett over a 6-month period. 7 flagged elevator-related concerns. 3 specifically referenced Unit 3. 1, dated just 11 days before the incident, described the exact relay fault that caused the failure. Bradley had marked it reviewed in the system without reading it. The timestamp showed he'd closed the report 4 seconds after opening it. The security footage was worse. Camera 12 in the main lobby captured the full confrontation. Bradley ordering Emmett away from the elevator, calling him an animal, instructing security to physically remove the only person capable of performing the rescue. The audio was pristine, every word preserved. "Filthy animal. Your kind. Drag him out." The investigation team flagged it as potential evidence of racial discrimination under Title VII of the Civil Rights Act. But the detail that sealed Bradley's fate wasn't the language, it was the timeline. Between Emmett's warning at 7:50 and Victoria's entrapment at 9:47, Bradley had done nothing. No inspection, no call to Omnilift, no shutdown. He'd watched a basketball game on his phone while the relay board burned itself into failure. Victoria read the report with her door closed, called her general counsel. The conversation lasted 11 minutes. Bradley Tate was terminated before lunch. The letter cited 3 grounds: gross negligence in safety oversight, failure to act on documented maintenance alerts, and conduct constituting workplace harassment based on race. His building management certification was reported to the licensing board. Within 2 weeks, his name appeared on the National Association of Building Operators Suspension Registry, a blacklist that followed a person from employer to employer, city to city. Bradley cleaned out his desk on a Wednesday afternoon. Security escorted him through the lobby, the same lobby where he'd thrown a wrench into a trash can, called a man a cockroach, and stood with his arms crossed while a woman nearly died above him. He didn't look up. He didn't speak. The glass doors closed behind him, and the building kept running as if he'd never been there at all. 3 employees present during the confrontation, those the footage showed laughing, filming, or encouraging Bradley, received formal written warnings. 2 requested transfers within the month. The 3rd resigned. Craig Weaver found Emmett in the engineering office 2 weeks after the promotion. He stood in the doorway, hands in his pockets, the way he always did when he had something to say, but wasn't sure how to begin. "I should have spoken up," Craig said. "That night, every night before it. I knew what he was doing to you, and I just stood there." Emmett looked at him. "You left coffee on my locker every shift for 3 months. That's not enough. It was on the nights it mattered." Emmett paused. "Sit down, Craig. I need an electrician I can trust. You interested?" Craig sat down. He didn't say thank you. The handshake said it. The story spread through Sterling Tower the way real stories always do. Not through memos or announcements, but through whispers in break rooms, conversations by the coffee machine, and the quiet understanding that something had shifted in the building's foundation. Not the concrete, not the steel, something deeper. The man who fixed the elevator had fixed something else too. Something that had been broken long before the relay board failed. 6 months later, Emmett stood in the Sterling Tower lobby in a pressed suit, Director of Engineering and Building Safety. Lily held his left hand. She told everyone at school the same thing. "My dad fixes buildings." But the building wasn't the only thing that changed. It started with working lunches on the 38th floor, then coffee past 7. Then a Saturday, when Victoria showed up at his apartment with takeout and a nervous smile, and Lily opened the door first. "Are you my dad's friend?" Lily asked. Victoria knelt down. "I'd like to be." That was the beginning, not of a contract, of something Emmett's heart had given up on the day Denise closed her eyes. a family. If you've ever been judged before you could prove who you are, drop your story in the comments. Share this with someone who needs it. And subscribe. We find stories the world almost missed every single week.
80 minutes, one toolbox, and a 12 desert coat that lived nowhere but inside his head. That's all it took. But the story isn't really about an elevator, is it? It's about what happens when the world decides who you are before you even open your mouth. A gray jumpsuit, grease under your fingernails, the color of your skin, and suddenly you're not qualified, you're not capable, you're not even worth listening to. But here's the thing about skill. It doesn't care what uniform you're wearing. It doesn't care who's watching. Emma's father said it best. Every machine talks. You just gotta learn to listen. And that man listened when nobody else could. Not for promotion, not to prove anyone wrong, because broken is wrong, period. Now, be honest with me. Have you ever been in a room where you knew you belonged and still have to fight just to be seen? Or maybe you being silent one? You watched it happen, you knew it was wrong, but you had bills to pay, kids to feed, so you stay quiet. I'm not joking, I'm asking, because silence has a chord too. Tell me your story in the comments. I read every single one. If this moved you, share it with someone who needs it today, and subscribe to my channel. We find the stories the world almost missed. Skill doesn't have a color. It never did.